Welcome, gentle explorers of the unseen. Tonight, in this small corner of the vast digital universe, you're invited to rest. Settle in, let your shoulders relax, and know you're exactly where you're meant to be. Whether you're lying in a quiet room, tracing city lights from a window, or simply searching for a sense of calm in the gentle hum of your daily life, this is your time. Here, you're not required to fix anything. No need to hold on to every word or chase every idea. Just allow your mind to soften, as if it's settling into a warm bath. Let the world outside fade. You're among friends, fellow travelers curious about the mysteries within and beyond, listeners who yearn to feel a little more at home in their own thoughts. You belong here with your questions and your wonder. Wherever you're tuning in from, however your day has unfolded, know that you're joining a quiet community, a gathering drawn not by the need to master, but to notice, to reflect, and to be gently surprised. Sometimes the most profound changes happen not through force or effort, but through a simple willingness to listen, to question, and to open. So, how are you feeling tonight? Is your mind restless, seeking answers? Or is it tired, longing for something softer, something that doesn't demand, but simply offers? Maybe you're here out of curiosity, or perhaps something deeper. However you arrive, thank you for letting this moment become a gentle sanctuary, a soft landing for your spirit. Tonight, our theme weaves together self-discovery, the quantum world, and the invisible forces that shape the universe and your reality. We'll explore not just how your mind works, but why it glitches, why change can feel impossible, and why reality itself sometimes refuses to play by the rules. This is a space for those who feel the tug of mystery, who wonder if there's more to their story than meets the eye, who sense that somewhere beneath the surface, their own operating system might be running with hidden bugs and secret codes. You don't need to remember every theory, every paradox, every strange quantum truth we encounter. Let your mind wander and settle again, as if you're tracing the path of a single leaf drifting on a cosmic breeze. Trust that what matters will stay with you, and what doesn't will simply float away. Tonight, we're not just talking about the mind. We're exploring the places where thought, memory, and identity meet the most mysterious laws of the universe. What if the glitches in your mind, the habits you can't shake, the stories you tell yourself, the feelings you can't explain, are not errors at all but clues? What if those mistakes are hidden messages, keys to a deeper kind of freedom, a new kind of self-authorship? In this series, you'll be invited to question everything you thought was true about your mind. Each chapter will reveal a paradox, a question you can't ignore, a bug in the code that demands your attention, a contradiction that makes you stop and wonder, even if just for a breath. You won't find easy comfort here, but you will find something far more valuable, a chance to see yourself and your universe through fresh eyes. Consider this: if you're truly the author of your own mind, why does your story keep glitching? Why do you stumble over the same patterns, repeat the same mistakes, or wake up sometimes feeling like a stranger in your own head? There is a code running underneath, quiet and invisible, shaping each thought and decision. Yet every now and then you sense a crack in the system, a flicker, a ripple, a glitch. Throughout this journey, you'll learn to recognize those cracks as opportunities, not failures, but the quantum openings where reality itself invites you to rewrite, to question, to start anew. Together, we'll trace the contours of these mysteries, from the autopilot routines that run your days, to the paradoxes of memory and identity, to the strange quantum laws that seem to rewrite reality as soon as you look. Rest easy. Let your mind open, not with strain, but with curiosity and trust. You don't need to have all the answers. The questions themselves are enough. As we move forward, feel free to breathe deeper. Notice the gentle rhythms of your body, and allow your thoughts to flow. You are safe here, encouraged, supported. You are more than the sum of your habits. You are more than the story you've been told. And so, with that spirit, gentle, curious, and brave, we begin this series. You're programming your mind all wrong. Here's the quantum rewrite. Throughout this series, we'll gently pry open the logic boards of consciousness, unmask patterns that hold you back, and peer into the shimmering cracks where your reality leaks through. You'll see yourself not just as a passenger in your mind, but as both the author and the reader, the coder and the code. We won't provide tidy resolutions. Each chapter will leave you with a riddle, a mystery that lingers like a secret melody. And just when you think you've found your footing, the ground will shift beneath you. Are you ready to notice the bugs in your code? Are you willing to sit with the discomfort of paradox, with the unresolved tension that is the true spark of transformation? This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about seeing yourself clearly, and in that clarity, finding the freedom to write a new story. A story that doesn't just follow the old logic, but dares to question reality itself. As we begin, remember, you are safe. You are held. There's no rush. Let the paradoxes unfold in their own time. The universe is strange and beautiful, and so are you. Let's begin to notice the error code in your reality. If you're in control, why can't you stop yourself? Beneath the gentle hum of daily life, a pattern pulses. Steady, unseen, relentless. You wake, move through your day, respond to messages, choose what to eat, what to say, how to feel. Yet behind these choices, a quieter truth stirs. How often do you truly choose? How often are your thoughts, your reactions, your entire sense of self simply running on autopilot, an intricate, invisible program set in motion long ago? It feels natural to claim ownership of each thought, each reaction. The world has taught you that the mind is a tool, a faithful servant responding to your every command. But a closer look reveals another truth. Even as you strive for change, even as you try to rewrite old habits, something within resists. It's as if a shadow hand steers the wheel, guiding you through familiar loops, pulling you back into comfort, even when comfort no longer serves you. This is the unsettling heart of the mind's autopilot, the sensation of being both the driver and the passenger, steering and steered. It is a paradox that gnaws at certainty. How can you claim to be in control when your own behaviors, your own thoughts betray you? Consider the morning routine. The alarm rings. A surge of intention fills you. Today, you'll break the habit. You'll choose the healthy breakfast, resist the scrolling, pause before reacting to the same triggers. Yet by noon, the script is running. The toast is buttered. The phone is unlocked. The words are said before your awareness even catches up. The day flows on, and at the end, you ask, who was driving? The truth is both disturbing and liberating. The mind is a masterful machine, built for efficiency, designed to save energy. Over time, it automates what was once conscious, burning paths deep into your neural landscape. Habits become highways, thoughts carve canyons, feelings are set to default. And so, what began as choice becomes automatic, an elegant trick that frees the conscious mind for other pursuits, but at a cost. There is a comfort in this automation, but also a loss. Each habit that runs without question narrows the field of possibility. The mind, hungry for efficiency, resists the discomfort of change, the friction of newness. The old code whispers that safety is found in repetition, that what worked yesterday will work again. But what happens when the code is wrong? What happens when comfort becomes confinement? You begin to notice the glitches, the frustration of repeating mistakes, the guilt of failed resolutions, the sense of drifting through your own life as a spectator. The mind whispers that you are choosing, but a deeper voice asks, who is choosing? Is it you or a pattern disguised as you? The contradiction deepens. Every attempt to interrupt the autopilot feels like a struggle against yourself. You set intentions, make promises, vow to change, but the old program pulls you back. The harder you push, the stronger the resistance. It's not weakness. It's not failure. It's the logic of the machine running exactly as it was built to run. Yet, within this paradox, a new possibility shimmers. If the autopilot is not you but simply a program, then perhaps there is a way to access the code. Perhaps there is a place where awareness can slip between the circuits, notice the old logic, and introduce a quantum shift. But first, you must notice the program itself. You must watch the mind with gentle curiosity, not as an enemy to conquer, but as a marvel to understand. Each time you notice the script running, Each time you catch yourself mid-habit, you open a tiny crack in the code. You create a space for choice to return. A breath, a pause, a flicker of something new. This is not about blame. There is no shame in the mind's automation. It is the sign of a brilliant system, one that kept you safe, allowed you to survive, to grow, to adapt. But safety can become a prison if the code is never questioned. And the first step toward freedom is not battle, but awareness. Notice how the mind resists. Notice the stories it tells. This is just how I am. I've always done it this way. Change is too hard. These stories are not truths. They are echoes of the autopilot, looping again and again, hoping you'll believe them, hoping you'll stay inside the old script. Pause. Breathe. Watch the patterns unfold. Watch the habits rise and fall. Watch the thoughts parade across your mind, each convinced of its own importance. Who is watching? Who is it that notices the program, that feels the tension between old habit and new intention? In that silent noticing, something shifts. You are no longer entirely the program. You are the awareness within, the gentle observer peering through the quantum cracks. You begin to see the system for what it is, a set of instructions, a learned sequence, a code that can be rewritten. Yet the paradox remains. If you're truly in control, why can't you stop yourself? Why does the mind cling so fiercely to the old patterns, even when they cause pain? The answer is not simple, and it is not comforting. It is a question that will linger, unsettling and unresolved. A thread you cannot pull without unraveling the whole fabric. And perhaps that is the point. True change is not found in quick fixes or in forcing the mind to obey. It is found in sitting with the discomfort, in questioning the autopilot, in noticing the code as it runs. Each moment of awareness is a small rebellion, a quiet revolution. Each pause is a vote for a new story. Yet, as you awaken to the truth of the autopilot, a deeper mystery emerges. Now you've glimpsed who's at the wheel. But what if every turn you take just sends you deeper into the maze? Next, we will encounter the paradox of change itself, a question that sits at the heart of self-improvement. If growth is natural, why does every attempt to change make you feel trapped? If growth is natural, why does every attempt to change make you feel trapped? There's a peculiar frustration buried deep within every effort to change. The moment you set your intention, something stirs beneath the surface. A strange resistance, subtle yet fierce, tightening its grip as you reach for transformation. The logic should be simple. You want to change, you see the need, you even take the first steps. And yet, like a shadow that grows darker the closer you get to the light, the very act of trying to shift your mind's programming seems to pull you deeper into the old loops. The paradox becomes suffocating. Each effort to break free forges new chains. Why does growth, that most natural urge, feel so much like a trap? The landscape of self-improvement is littered with broken promises and half-built bridges to new selves. You set your sights on a healthier habit, a calmer mind, a braver voice. You read, reflect, write down your goals, whisper encouragements into the mirror. In those early moments, the promise of change feels real. A surge of hope, a bright horizon. But soon the resistance arrives. The brain begins to bargain, to distract, to demand comfort. Old stories resurface, louder and more convincing. Before you know it, the gravity of your past pulls you back. The attempt at rewiring becomes a struggle against quicksand. Every movement sinks you deeper. What is this force that pushes back so strongly against growth? It isn't laziness, and it isn't lack of will. The answer lies in the very nature of the mind's programming. For every pattern you try to rewrite, there is an older logic working tirelessly to maintain stability. The mind's autopilot, built to save energy and reduce uncertainty, views change as a threat, a glitch in the system that must be repaired, not encouraged. Even positive change, if it disrupts the established order, is treated as an error. Here, the paradox sharpens. The more you focus on changing yourself, the more you reinforce the sense that something is wrong, broken, or lacking. Your attention becomes a double-edged sword. Each attempt to fix the self carves a deeper groove in the very identity you seek to transcend. The problem you try to solve becomes the story you repeat. This contradiction echoes in the most ordinary struggles. Consider the urge to be more mindful. You notice your mind wandering, so you try to catch yourself and bring attention back to the present. Yet the harder you try to stop wandering, the more restless you become. Mindfulness, which should be a gentle return, mutates into an exhausting battle against distraction. Or take the desire to build confidence. You set out to conquer your doubts, only to find that focusing on your insecurities gives them new life, magnifying what you wished would fade away. Why does this happen? It's not a flaw in your character, but a quirk of consciousness itself. The mind clings to what is familiar, even if that familiarity brings suffering. Each old habit, each limiting belief forms a kind of safety net, a script that promises, you know how to survive this. You've survived it before. The new, the unknown, even when imagined as liberating, feels risky. So the inner machinery rebels. Change is coded as danger. Comfort, even painful comfort, is coded as safety. This is the trap. The more you try to fight your programming, the more entangled you become in it. The effort to escape becomes the glue that binds you tighter. It's a logic that feels cruel, but it is simply the machine at work, doing what it was designed to do. Protect, preserve, repeat. And yet, the longing for change does not disappear. It surfaces again and again, whispering that something more is possible. If you listen closely, you'll sense that this longing isn't about escaping the self, but about returning to a truer, more fluid state. A state where growth happens not through force, but through understanding. But how does one move from struggle to understanding? The first clue is found in the paradox itself. Notice what happens the moment you stop fighting the urge to change. For a breath, a flicker, the tension eases. The mind softens its grip, the pattern loosens. Awareness emerges not as an adversary, but as an ally. In this space, the meaning of change begins to shift. Change is not a battle to be won, but a dance to be entered. Each old program, each resistant thought, is not an enemy but a messenger, evidence of a deeper logic, a wisdom encoded by your history. The system is not broken. It is simply following its rules. And the moment you see those rules clearly, you gain the freedom to question them. Still, the puzzle remains. If you're supposed to grow, why does growth hurt so much? The answer is subtle. True growth demands a willingness to meet discomfort, to sit with uncertainty, to welcome the tension between what is and what could be. This is the quantum in your mind, a space of possibility, but also of ambiguity. You cannot force the leap. You can only create the conditions for it to happen. You become not by battling the code, but by allowing the old logic to be seen, understood, and gently rewritten. In these moments, curiosity becomes your greatest tool. Curiosity dissolves judgment. It makes space for something new to emerge. You begin to ask not, how do I force myself to change? But, what is this resistance trying to teach me? What hidden wisdom does it hold? Suddenly, the pattern loses its power. The code becomes visible. The glitch is not a failure. It's a doorway. Yet the paradox will always remain, a ghost in the machine. For every step forward, a part of you will want to step back. For every new intention, an old program will try to rerun. This is not proof of failure. It is the proof that you are alive, conscious, forever caught between the known and the possible. Change, then, is not a clean break from the past. It is a negotiation, a conversation between different versions of yourself. Sometimes, the most profound shifts begin with surrender, with letting go of the need to control, and instead listening, noticing, questioning. Each glitch, each setback is an invitation to look more closely, to understand more deeply. The mind's code may resist, but it cannot ignore the call of awareness. Over time, even the most stubborn patterns begin to soften. You learn to approach change not as an adversary, but as a friend. The paradox doesn't disappear, but it loses its sting. The trap becomes a puzzle, and the puzzle becomes a path. And so, the question lingers, if growth is natural, why does every attempt to change make you feel trapped? Let the question stay open, unanswered. Allow it to spark your curiosity. The paradox is the proof that you are not just a machine, not just a bundle of code. You are the awareness that notices, the presence that wonders, the consciousness that dares to ask why. Yet, As you soften into this new understanding, another mystery emerges, one that hides in plain sight, shaping every thought, every attempt at transformation. Next, we will unravel the riddle of memory itself. If your memories are yours, why do they rewrite themselves when you're not looking? If your memories are yours, why do they rewrite themselves when you're not looking? Memory is often called the storybook of the self, the archive where your history is kept safe, facts and feelings preserved for you to revisit, learn from, and share. Yet beneath the surface, memory is no static record. It is a living, shifting phenomenon, shaped as much by the present as by the past. In this chapter, you're invited to step gently into the eerie uncertainty of your own recollections and question the very ground on which your identity stands. Every day, you reach for memories as if opening a well-worn journal. You recall childhood scenes, pivotal moments, the faces of those you love, the details of yesterday's conversation. Each memory feels solid, yours unique, unchanging. But a quiet contradiction lurks in the shadows. Science shows that each time you remember, you do not simply retrieve an old file. You rewrite it. Your brain, like a quantum editor, changes the story with every retelling, blending present emotions, expectations, and beliefs into the recollection. The implication is unsettling. If memory is so mutable, how can you trust anything you remember? How can the foundation of your identity rest on such shifting sands? Consider the moments you've been certain about. A first kiss, a betrayal, a victory, a heartbreak. These memories seem seared into your being. But research reveals that confidence and accuracy are not twins. The more emotionally charged a memory, the more likely it is to morph with every recall. Like a digital file edited and saved over and over, the original is overwritten. The feeling remains, but the facts blur, shift, and sometimes disappear entirely. This is not a trick of the mind, but its nature. Your brain is not a camera. It is a meaning-making machine. Each time you remember, you reconstruct, filling in gaps, reshaping details to fit your current worldview. The story you tell today may not match the one you told last year. Sometimes, two people who shared an event will remember it so differently that it feels as if they lived parallel lives. The consequences ripple outward. Memory becomes less a stable record and more a tool, molded to serve present needs. Old wounds grow sharper or softer depending on the present moment. Achievements shrink or swell to fit the self-image you carry now. You remember what you need to remember in order to sustain your current identity, beliefs, and emotional equilibrium. If your memories are so unreliable, what does that mean for the story of your life? Is your identity merely a collection of comforting fictions, rearranged to suit the present? The question can feel disorienting, even threatening. The mind longs for stability, for a past that grounds the present. But the truth is less comforting and more freeing. If your memories are not set in stone, then neither are the limits they impose. Yet this realization comes with its own risks. If you cannot trust your own memories, how can you trust your perceptions, your beliefs, your most deeply held stories about yourself and others? The unsettling possibility arises. Maybe the very foundation of your understanding is a living, moving target. This insight, unsettling as it is, can spark a new relationship to memory. Instead of treating memories as fixed truths, you begin to see them as stories, useful, meaningful, but never final. The self is not a prisoner of the past, but a creative storyteller, editing and adapting in real time. This view does not erase the pain or the joy of the past. Instead, it softens the grip of old wounds, loosens the hold of shame and regret. You begin to recognize that the past is always, in some sense, being written in the present. Memory becomes an act of creation, a dance between then and now. Still, the paradox remains. If your memories are yours, why do they rewrite themselves when you're not looking? Is there an original you can ever recover, or are you always changing, even when you try to stay the same? This question reveals the deep link between memory and identity. You want to change, to grow beyond the limits of your story. But if memory itself is fluid, how can you trust the motivations that push you forward? Are your desires your own, or the product of stories you barely remember rewriting? Curiosity offers a path through the uncertainty. Rather than clutching memories tightly, you learn to hold them with gentleness, to question their origins, to listen for the ways they shift in the light of new understanding. You realize that even pain can change shape, that even joy can grow larger in the retelling. The mind, ever the quantum artist, paints and repaints the story of your life. There is power here. If memory is flexible, then the self is not confined. Old limits, old labels, old wounds. These are not life sentences, but stories waiting to be reimagined. The glitches in memory, far from being flaws, are invitations to see the self as a living, breathing possibility. Yet the tension persists. You want it to change, but can you trust the stories fueling that desire? Each attempt at self-improvement, each act of remembering, is filtered through a mind that edits as it goes. There is no solid ground, only shifting possibilities. The awareness of this memory virus is not a call to despair, but to greater honesty. You begin to recognize the stories you've told yourself, stories about what you can and cannot do, about who you are and who you must be. Some stories serve you, others shrink your world. All are open to revision. So, can you trust anything you remember? The answer is never final. The question, like a Zen koan, keeps the mind open, unsettled, and curious. Memory is not the anchor you imagined, but a sail, catching new winds, charting new courses, allowing you to move forward with greater freedom. As the chapter closes, one more paradox flickers into view, stranger still than those before. You've wanted to change, but your memories keep shifting. Now the gaze turns inward to the deepest observer. Next, we will face the observer trap. If you're watching your thoughts, who's watching you? If you're watching your thoughts, who's watching you? In the dim corridors of consciousness, there is a phenomenon so ordinary that it hides in plain sight. At any moment, you can direct your attention inward and notice your own thoughts as they arise. This capacity feels like the highest achievement of self-awareness. The mind watching itself, the witness behind the curtain, quietly observing every drama and delight. Yet beneath the gentle surface of introspection, an unsettling question begins to pulse. If you are the one observing your thoughts, then who or what is observing you? It is the mind's oldest trick and its greatest mystery. With a single shift of attention, you pull back from the current of thought and become the watcher, the one who notices, who questions, who sees the play unfold without becoming entangled in every plot twist. This ability to observe is often praised as the gateway to wisdom, the secret to freedom from old habits and suffering. But a paradox quickly emerges. When you look for the watcher, you find only another layer of thought, another pattern, another point of view, another voice within the mind, endlessly reflecting back at itself. How deep does this rabbit hole go? Try, just for a moment, to catch the watcher in the act. The instant you notice yourself observing, a strange doubling occurs. Now you are not just aware of your thoughts, but aware of your awareness. The observer becomes the observed, and with each attempt to step behind the scenes, another layer of self emerges, ready to claim the spotlight. This infinite regress, the observer observing the observer, and so on, has haunted philosophers, neuroscientists, and seekers for centuries. The search for a stable I, a central programmer hidden behind the patterns, leads not to clarity, but to a cascade of shifting perspectives. Each time you think you've found the true witness, it slips away, revealing itself as just another story, another process running in the background. And yet, the experience of watching your thoughts is undeniable. There is a distinct sense of distance, a spaciousness, that arises when you pull back from identification with your thoughts and feelings. In those moments, suffering softens, and the chaos of emotion loses its grip. The mind seems to float free, unattached, capable of choosing its response rather than reacting blindly. This is the promise of mindfulness, the core of countless spiritual traditions, the possibility that you are not the contents of consciousness, but the context in which they arise. But this promise hides a glitch. The moment you try to grasp the observer, to claim it as your true self, it dissolves into the fog of awareness. You cannot find the watcher in the way you find an object or an idea. There is no control room, no central programmer pulling the levers. Each attempt to pinpoint the source of your consciousness leads only to more questions, more uncertainty, more mirrors reflecting mirrors. Is this a design flaw or the deepest feature of the mind? The observer trap unsettles the notion of a fixed self. If you are not your thoughts and you are not even the watcher of your thoughts, then who or what are you? The boundaries blur. The story you tell about yourself, the one grounded in memory and identity, begins to unravel. Each layer peeled away reveals only another mask, another process, another ghost in the machine. For many, this realization is deeply uncomfortable. The longing for a solid self, a stable core, is a powerful force. The mind craves certainty, a place to stand, a center to return to when chaos threatens. Yet the deeper you look, the more that center recedes into abstraction. You begin to wonder if the entire project of self-improvement, of programming and reprogramming the mind, is built on an illusion. Still, there is a strange liberation in this uncertainty. If the self is not a fixed entity but a process, a dance of perspectives, a play of awareness, then you are less trapped than you thought. The old programs, the stubborn habits, the pain of memory and expectation are not chains around a solid core. They are currents in a river that is always flowing, always changing, never quite the same from moment to moment. This perspective invites a new kind of freedom. Instead of clinging to a fixed identity, you begin to relax into the mystery of your own consciousness. You learn to watch the watcher and even to let go of the need for a watcher at all. Thoughts arise and pass, sensations flow, and awareness remains. Vast, open, undefinable. You are not the programmer or the programmed, but the space in which programming happens. Yet the paradox remains, gnawing at the edges of understanding. If you are not your thoughts and you are not even the observer, then what is left? Can you ever step outside your own programming? Or are you always inside the code, dreaming of freedom while the system hums on? The tension builds. You have seen your memories morph, witnessed the stories change with every retelling. You have learned to question the observer, to peer into the infinite regress of consciousness. But the question still haunts you: who is in control? If the mind is a machine, where is the operator? This is the observer trap, the endless search for a stable vantage point, a final authority, a true self behind all appearances. It is the glitch that keeps you questioning, the paradox that refuses to resolve. And yet, it is also the invitation to let go of the search, to rest in the unknowing, to allow consciousness to be what it is: mysterious, shifting, endlessly creative. For some, this realization is terrifying. The ground of certainty disappears, and you are left suspended in a sea of not knowing. But for others, this is the moment when true possibility opens. Without a fixed self to defend, without an unchanging identity to maintain, you become fluid, adaptable, capable of transformation that runs deeper than any program or story. Still, the mind's patterns persist. Old habits reassert themselves. The observer, even when seen as a process, can become a new identity, a subtler mask, a cleverer trick. The question circles back: are you ever really free? Or is every escape just another loop in the code? The observer trap is not a puzzle to be solved, but a riddle to be lived. Its power lies in its ability to unsettle, to disrupt the smooth flow of certainty, to open the mind to new possibilities. You begin to see that freedom is not found in discovering the true self, but in loosening the grip of all selves, in relaxing the need to define, to control, to program. The watcher, the watched, the process of watching, they are all currents in the same river, different aspects of a single, mysterious phenomenon. To see this is not to lose yourself, but to become more spacious, more alive, more capable of embracing the full range of experience. Yet even as you settle into this new awareness, a deeper question arises, more personal and more troubling. If you are both the observer and the observed, then why do you keep repeating the same patterns, the same mistakes, the same self-sabotaging behaviors? If seeing the code is not enough to change it, what hope is there for real transformation? You realize now you're both observer and observed. But why can't you break your code, even when you see it? Next, we will pull back the curtain on the mind's most maddening paradox. If you hate your patterns, why are you addicted to them? If you hate your patterns, why are you addicted to them? A chill runs through the code of consciousness when you encounter this question. You have become aware of your habits, your triggers, your wounds. You've watched yourself from the inside, mapped the programs running in the background, and yet here you are again, repeating the very patterns that bring you pain. Feels almost cruel. Knowledge was supposed to be freedom, awareness the key to change. But in the dim light of self-reflection, another glitch appears. The stubborn, sticky power of self-sabotage. Every person carries a list, mental or written, of things they wish to stop doing. Maybe it's procrastination, lashing out in anger, retreating into numbness, indulging in self-criticism, shrinking from opportunity, or chasing validation. These patterns are well known, mapped with painful precision. You promise yourself that this time will be different. This time you'll break the loop. Yet, at the crucial moment, the program runs again, and you watch yourself act it out with a sense of helpless inevitability. This is the algorithm of self-sabotage. A script that seems to operate beneath the level of willpower, out of reach of reason, repeating the same routines regardless of intention or insight. Why does the mind cling so fiercely to these patterns, even when you know they hurt? The answer is not a simple flaw or defect, but a tangled web of logic and emotion, safety and fear. Begin by noticing the emotional charge attached to old patterns. Each act of self-sabotage carries a familiar feeling, a rush of relief, a pang of shame, a taste of nostalgia for the known. Even pain, when repeated often enough, becomes comfortable. The mind, ever efficient, wires together neurons that fire together, creating shortcuts to survival. If suffering is what you know, suffering becomes home. You hate the pain, but you crave the familiarity. This contradiction lies at the heart of addiction, not just to substances, but to thought patterns, emotional loops, and self-defeating behaviors. The mind mistakes the known for the safe and the unknown for danger. Each time you approach a breakthrough, the algorithm kicks in, nudging you back toward the well-worn grooves, the safety of repetition. Growth is coded as risk. Change is experienced as threat. Yet the algorithm is not only emotional, it is logical in its own warped way. Each pattern of self-sabotage once served a purpose, protecting you from disappointment, shielding you from vulnerability, maintaining a sense of control. The mind does not update these codes automatically. The logic that kept you safe as a child may become a prison as an adult, but the program runs on, indifferent to circumstance. You see this most clearly in moments of self-awareness. You catch yourself about to repeat a pattern, hesitating before a difficult conversation, reaching for distraction instead of focus, preparing an excuse before you've even failed. Awareness flares, but the program runs anyway. In these moments, the old algorithm feels more powerful than any intention, any will. The pain of this recognition can be sharp. You may feel broken, defeated, convinced that something is wrong with you. But the truth is more complex. Self-sabotage is not a personal failing. It is the mind's desperate attempt to maintain equilibrium. The program does not hate you. It simply wants to keep you safe, even if that safety comes at a terrible cost. This realization invites a new kind of curiosity. Instead of fighting the pattern, you begin to inquire, what purpose did this behavior once serve? What need was it trying to meet? What pain was it trying to prevent? The answers are often tender, rooted in old wounds and unmet needs. The algorithm is stubborn not because you are weak, but because it was built for survival in a world that once felt dangerous. Yet even when you understand the origins of your patterns, breaking them is no simple task. Insight alone is rarely enough. The algorithm is embedded not just in thought, but in sensation, emotion, even the chemistry of your body. Stress triggers the old responses, and before you know it, the program is running again. Change requires patience, repetition, and a willingness to feel uncomfortable for longer than the mind finds tolerable. Still, there is hope. The brain is plastic, capable of rewiring, capable of forming new pathways. Each time you pause before acting out an old pattern, each time you choose a different response, you weaken the old code and strengthen the new. The process is not linear. Relapses are not failures, but part of the logic of change. The key is not to fight the algorithm, but to become conscious of it, to hold it in awareness without judgment, and to choose again and again a new direction. But why does this process feel so maddeningly slow? Why do you find yourself addicted to patterns you despise? The answer, once again, is paradox. The mind is not simply logical. It is emotional, embodied, tied to the rhythms of history and habit. The pain of breaking free is, for a time, greater than the pain of staying stuck. The algorithm persists because it is woven into the fabric of identity, the story you tell about who you are. Over time, as awareness deepens, the grip of self-sabotage loosens. You begin to see the pattern before it fully takes hold. You catch the algorithm running, not as a force of destiny, but as an old habit, a reflex that can be interrupted. Each pause is a crack in the code, a possibility for something new to emerge. Yet, the question lingers, why do you keep repeating what you swore you'd stop? The answer is never final, never complete. It is a riddle at the heart of being human, a tension between the comfort of the known and the possibility of the new. Now, the paradox sharpens further. You realize now you're both observer and observed. But why can't you break your code, even when you see it? Next, we will confront the mystery of identity itself. If your atoms and thoughts change every moment, who exactly are you defending? If your atoms and thoughts change every moment, who exactly are you defending? The notion of identity has long offered comfort, a sense of solid ground in a shifting world. Names, histories, tastes, beliefs, and memories form the scaffolding around which you build a story called me. Yet when you peer even a little closer, the structure reveals itself as something far stranger, less stable, and more dynamic than you ever imagined. Who or what are you really defending when you fight to preserve a sense of self? How can there be an unchanging you if every part of you is always in motion? Your body, from the cellular to the atomic, is in a constant state of exchange. Atoms flow in and out with every breath, every meal, every heartbeat. The cells of your skin, blood, and bones are replaced over days, weeks, and years. You are a living process, not a fixed thing. The body you claim as your own today is not the body you inhabited a year ago. Even the very neurons that make up your brain, and by extension your memories, are continually changing, wiring and rewiring themselves in response to experience. Yet the illusion of continuity persists. You recall moments from years past, feeling that you are the same person who experienced them. You defend your opinions, nurture your grudges, honor your promises, and cherish your dreams as if there is a stable self at the core, overseeing the parade of change. But beneath the surface, something doesn't add up. If everything that makes up you is in flux, your body, your thoughts, your memories, even your desires, then what exactly is the you that endures? Science offers only deeper puzzles. The quantum world reveals that particles themselves do not have fixed identities. They flicker in and out of being, swapping places, appearing as waves and then as points, depending on how they are observed. The boundaries that separate you from the world, or from other people, are less rigid than they seem. The molecules in your lungs were once part of distant forests, oceans, or even other people. You are not so much an island as a temporary arrangement, a momentary pattern in a river of energy and matter. Psychology brings its own revelations. Your personality is not a monolith, but a shifting blend of traits, tendencies, and roles, changing from one context to another. The you that shows up with family may vanish entirely when you're with strangers or alone. Beliefs that seemed permanent can crumble overnight. Desires that felt essential can evaporate in a flash of new insight. Who, then, is steering the ship? Yet the mind clings to identity as if to a lifeboat. The stories you tell about yourself, your triumphs, failures, preferences, wounds, serve as anchors, a way to navigate a world that never stops shifting. These stories are not lies, but they are not the truth either. They are creative acts, updated moment by moment to suit the needs of survival, connection, and meaning. The paradox grows sharper the more you seek to define yourself. The urge to find your true self is itself a trick of the mind, an endless quest for something that, by its nature, cannot be pinned down. The harder you try to be authentic, the more you discover that authenticity is a moving target. There is no single you to discover, only a process of becoming that never quite resolves. Still, the mind is ingenious. It adapts to this uncertainty by drawing boundaries between past and present, between self and other, between who you are and who you want to become. These boundaries provide a sense of security, but they are always provisional, always under negotiation. Even the deepest aspects of identity, gender, nationality, morality, love, are shaped by forces outside your conscious control. Biology, culture, experience, trauma, and chance. The result is a kind of existential vertigo. If you are always changing, who exactly are you defending when you cling to old beliefs or fight for your place in the world? If the you of this morning is already fading into memory, what is left to protect? This question has profound implications. It challenges not only your personal sense of self, but the very logic by which you interact with others. Every conflict, every argument, every act of comparison rests on the assumption that there is a stable me and a stable you. But if identity is always in motion, these battles become shadows dancing on the wall, fierce, important, but ultimately insubstantial. Yet there is no need for despair. The fluidity of identity is not a flaw, but a feature. It is what allows for growth, empathy, forgiveness, and transformation. You are not doomed to be the sum of your past mistakes or even your past triumphs. The self is spacious, elastic, open to revision. You are capable of becoming new in every moment, not because you erase the past, but because you integrate it, allowing what is no longer needed to fall away. Still, the mind resists. There is comfort in the familiar, even when it no longer fits. Letting go of an old identity can feel like dying, a loss of ground, a tumble into uncertainty. The urge to defend, to justify, to insist on continuity is powerful. It is the mind's way of staving off the terror of emptiness, the dread of not existing at all. But look closer. Beneath the surface anxiety, a new possibility opens. If you are not bound by a fixed self, you are free to reinvent, to experiment, to play. You can hold your identities lightly, as costumes worn for a time, shed when they no longer serve. You can forgive others their inconsistencies, knowing you are just as inconsistent yourself. You can greet the unknown with curiosity, not fear. Yet the challenge remains. You've tried to smash your loops, to break free from patterns, but can you fight for an identity that keeps dissolving beneath your feet? The answer is both humbling and empowering. The self is not a thing to be found, but a process to be lived. A dance between memory and possibility, between habit and surprise, between defending and releasing. This new perspective does not erase the need for meaning. It simply invites you to find meaning in the flow, not in the fixed. Every day you awaken as someone slightly different than before. Every interaction rewrites you. Every experience etches a new line in your story. The question is not who am I, but who am I becoming right now? This is the quantum nature of identity. Uncertainty, possibility, and transformation woven together in a tapestry that is never finished. Your mind, your body, your sense of self, all are open systems, shaped by forces seen and unseen. You are the author and the character, the code and the coder, always rewriting the script as you go. And now, as you sit with the dissolving boundaries of identity, a stranger paradox appears. What if reality itself is just as fluid? What if the universe, like the mind, refuses to follow any consistent code? Next, we will confront the possibility of impossible results, the strange moments when logic fails and the world hands you outcomes that make no sense at all. If the universe is rational, why does it keep handing you impossible results? If the universe is rational, why does it keep handing you impossible results? The world is supposed to follow rules. Science and logic offer comfort, a framework for understanding cause and effect, predicting outcomes, finding safety in patterns. Every day, you rely on this silent contract. Actions have consequences, efforts yield results. The future unfolds according to the logic of the past. Yet, scattered through the ordinary rhythms of life are moments that crack this contract wide open. Moments when reality itself seems to malfunction, delivering outcomes that defy all expectation and logic. Perhaps you've felt it. The eerie sense that something is off, that the world has slipped out of alignment, that your best efforts lead to chaos and your worst mistakes somehow trigger grace. Maybe it's the friend you bump into by impossible coincidence, the time you were spared by a twist of fate, or the nights when the universe seems to ignore your every plan, rearranging the script without your consent. These are the reality glitches, the moments that stubbornly resist explanation. Science, for all its elegance, is not immune to these paradoxes. In the realm of quantum physics, the fabric of the universe misbehaves spectacularly. Particles exist in many places at once, only choosing a position when observed. Entangled particles communicate instantly across vast distances, as if logic itself has no jurisdiction. Cause and effect blur, and certainty dissolves into a sea of probabilities. The universe, at its deepest level, refuses to be pinned down. You feel the ripple of this uncertainty in your own life. You plan, you strive, you make the best choices you can, and yet the outcomes often defy prediction. Sometimes, the harder you work, the more the goal slips away. Sometimes, letting go brings you everything you wanted. The world offers both justice and injustice, order and chaos, meaning and absurdity in dizzying alternation. If reality is governed by rational laws, why does it break its own rules so often? This paradox is not merely theoretical. It seeps into your daily experience. You believe you know how the world works. Cause leads to effect. Effort brings reward. Good deeds are returned in kind. Yet every so often, you witness a miracle, a tragedy, or a stroke of sheer improbability. The impossible occurs, and you are forced to reckon with a universe that is stranger than any story you could invent. For many, this is a source of frustration or even despair. The longing for control, for certainty, for a universe that responds predictably to your actions, is powerful. You want to believe that if you do the right things, good things will follow. That if you follow the rules, you will be safe. But the glitches in reality refuse to be tamed. They are reminders that the logic of the world is not your logic. The code running beneath the surface is written in a language you do not fully understand. Yet, there is also a wild kind of freedom in these glitches. When the rules break down, when the script goes off course, you are forced to improvise, to adapt, to let go of the illusion of control. In these moments, life reveals itself as possibility, not certainty. The universe is not a machine grinding toward a predetermined end, but a living mystery, open to surprise. The mind resists this freedom. It clings to the comfort of predictability, insisting that glitches are errors, that logic must be restored. But the glitches persist, and the paradox deepens. What if these moments of rupture are not mistakes, but messages? What if the universe, like the mind, is coded for possibility rather than certainty? In the ancient traditions, these glitches are treated not as failures, but as invitations, calls to wonder, to humility, to awe. The impossible becomes a doorway, opening you to realities beyond your current understanding. The mind wants to categorize, to explain away, but sometimes the only honest response is to admit, I do not know, cannot control. I am a participant in a reality that is far vaster and more mysterious than any story I can tell. Still, the tension remains. You have questioned your own identity, only to find it always dissolving. Now, reality itself refuses to obey the code you believe in. The glitches multiply as your logic crumbles. How do you live? How do you make sense of anything when the ground of reason is always shifting? The answer is not surrender to chaos, nor the frantic search for new rules, but the cultivation of flexibility, curiosity, and presence. You learn to hold your plans lightly, to embrace uncertainty, to greet the impossible with wonder rather than fear. You become less interested in controlling reality and more interested in meeting it as it is, wild, unpredictable, alive. Yet, as you learn to live with the glitches, another question emerges, a contradiction that sits at the very heart of self-knowledge. If reality can bend, if the world refuses to follow your logic, then how can knowing yourself ever offer true power? Next, we will stare into the mirror paradox, where every insight into yourself seems only to deepen the mystery. If knowing yourself is power, why does every insight push you further from the truth? If knowing yourself is power, Why does every insight push you further from the truth? There's a widely cherished belief that self-awareness is the ultimate tool for transformation. You hear it echoed in the voices of sages, therapists, and philosophers across time. Know yourself, and you will become free. With enough insight, you expect to rise above your struggles, see through your illusions, and finally steer the ship of your life with clarity and intention. Yet beneath this promise, a contradiction waits. One that sharpens with every attempt to stare deeply into your own mind. The more you seek to truly see yourself, the less clear the image becomes. The more insight you gain, the more the truth slips away. You may recall moments when self-awareness felt like a breakthrough. A flash of understanding, a painful revelation, an aha that seemed to rearrange your world. You watch your thoughts, you notice your patterns, you trace old wounds back to their source. For a brief time, it feels as if the fog is lifting, as if you are finally seeing what is real. And then, quietly, the fog returns, thicker than before. The insight that felt like solid ground dissolves into doubt. Another contradiction emerges. If you are seeing yourself more clearly, why do you suddenly feel more lost, more uncertain, more tangled than ever? The mirror paradox lives in this shadowy terrain. It reveals itself in those endless loops of self-reflection, those nights spent turning your thoughts inside out, only to find yourself circling the same questions, the same unresolved mysteries. The very act of examining your mind introduces a kind of distortion, a bias that colors what you see. You cannot look directly at yourself without changing the image. The observer and the observed collapse into each other. Science confirms the strangeness of this predicament. The act of introspection, of looking inward, activates new neural pathways, alters your state, and reshapes what is remembered and what is forgotten. The questions you ask direct attention, but they also filter reality, hiding as much as they reveal. Each insight is not a window to a fixed truth, but a lens that subtly distorts what lies beyond. Even language conspires in this deception. The words you use to describe yourself, anxious, brave, broken, resilient, are not pure reflections. They are labels, simplifications, attempts to tame complexity. The mind, in seeking to understand itself, turns infinite possibility into manageable storylines. In this way, every act of self-knowledge is also an act of self-limitation. The paradox intensifies in the pursuit of personal growth. You try to work on yourself, to uncover hidden motivations, to shine a light into the darkest corners of your psyche. With each discovery, you hope to gain power over your habits, your reactions, your life. Yet the more you know, the more you notice what remains hidden. Insight becomes a double-edged sword, illuminating some patterns while casting others into deeper shadow. There is a haunting quality to this chase. You watch yourself watching, analyze your analysis, and soon you're caught in a hall of mirrors where nothing is ever fully clear. It's as if every attempt to pin down the truth only creates more reflections, more versions of you, none of them entirely real. The center dissolves. The closer you look, the less you recognize. For some, this leads to paralysis, a kind of existential vertigo where every decision, every motive is suspect. Should you trust your insights? Or are they just another layer of story? Is the real you hidden behind the masks? Or are the masks all there is? The questions spiral out, unresolved. Yet, there is also a strange beauty in the mirror paradox. If self-knowledge is always partial, always shifting, then you are never fully defined, never completely known, not even to yourself. This means you are open, capable of surprise, impossible to reduce to a single story. The limitations of self-awareness become the source of freedom. Still, the paradox won't be tamed. The search for self-understanding is both necessary and doomed to incompletion. You cannot step entirely outside yourself. You cannot see with perfect clarity the one who is seeing. The mind longs for certainty, but receives only glimpses, fragments, and questions that multiply as answers recede. In the quest for power through self-knowledge, there is a risk of obsession, a belief that with enough introspection, enough work, you will finally gain mastery. But mastery remains elusive. Each new insight is a doorway to deeper complexity, deeper unknowing. You come to realize that wisdom is not the accumulation of answers, but the capacity to hold questions gently, to stand calmly at the edge of what cannot be seen. And so, you learn to live with the glitches, the blind spots, the unresolved tensions. You become a witness to your own unfolding, aware that you are both the artist and the painting, the question and the incomplete answer. Sometimes, self-awareness brings relief, clarity, and growth. Other times, it brings only more mirrors, more uncertainty. Both are part of the mystery. The journey does not end in frustration, but in humility, a softening of the need to be fully known, a willingness to let the mind remain partly hidden even to itself. You see that power does not come from perfect knowledge, but from acceptance, from flexibility, from a gentle curiosity that never exhausts itself in the search for certainty. Yet, the tension multiplies as your logic crumbles. How can the search for self-knowledge leave you seeing only illusions? Why does every answer breed new confusion? Every insight bring more mystery? The mind, like the universe, refuses to yield a single satisfying story. As the fog of self-awareness thickens, a deeper question takes shape, one that gnaws at the roots of autonomy and agency. If you cannot know yourself fully, can you ever truly choose? Are your actions your own? Or are you merely following a script you cannot see? Next, we will walk straight into the heart of this contradiction. If you have free will, why does every choice feel predestined? If you have free will, why does every choice feel predestined? Beneath the surface of daily life, the question of free will flickers like an electrical fault in the wiring of your experience. You believe in agency, the capacity to decide, to direct, to choose your own path. The world rewards those who take responsibility, who own their actions, who shape their destiny. Yet, the closer you look at the process of decision, the stranger and more troubling it becomes. Why, if you are free, do your choices so often feel inevitable, even rehearsed? Why, if you are in control, does your life seem to follow a script, complete with recurring themes, repeated mistakes, and outcomes that feel preordained? The contradiction sits quietly at the heart of the mind. Each day you make hundreds of decisions, big and small. What to eat, what to say, whom to trust, when to leap and when to hesitate. Each feels like a moment of freedom, a point at which you could have done otherwise. But when you retrace your steps, examining the chain of causes and effects, you find that every choice was shaped by forces you did not choose: habits, memories, emotions, even the body's chemistry and the weather outside. The sense of free will is haunted by the machinery of fate. Neuroscience deepens the paradox. Studies show that the brain prepares to act before you become consciously aware of your intention. The signal to move, to speak, to decide is detectable in neural patterns before you claim responsibility for it. By the time your conscious mind catches up, the choice has already been set in motion. Free will, it seems, may be less a cause than a commentary, an after-the-fact story you tell yourself about actions already underway. Yet the sensation of agency is persistent and powerful. You feel yourself to be the author of your life, responsible for what unfolds. Without this feeling, the world would be unbearable, a place of pure randomness or mechanical repetition. Morality, ambition, hope, and regret all depend on the idea that you could have chosen differently. Even as evidence mounts for the mechanistic nature of mind, you cling to the spark of freedom. The contradiction is not easily dismissed. If your choices arise from causes you did not select, genetics, upbringing, accidents of history, then in what sense are they yours? If every decision can be traced back to unconscious programming, is the story of agency just another comforting illusion? The deeper you look, the more fate's fingerprints cover your life. Yet, giving up on freedom brings its own dangers. To abandon the notion of agency is to surrender hope, to let go of responsibility, to become passive in the face of circumstance. Something within resists this surrender. You continue to plan, to dream, to regret and to strive, as if your will mattered. Philosophy offers little comfort. Some traditions insist that free will is a fiction, a byproduct of complexity. Others argue that choice is real but limited, shaped by constraints but not wholly determined. Quantum physics complicates things further, introducing randomness at the most fundamental level. But randomness is not freedom, merely unpredictability. The question of who pulls the strings remains unanswered. The lived experience is messier still. You sense the scripts playing out in your life, the roles assigned in childhood, the patterns inherited from parents, the pressures of culture and circumstance. At times, it feels as if you are a character in a story written long ago, following cues you did not invent. And yet, there are moments of real surprise, real deviation, real invention. Times when you step off the script and improvise, even if only for a heartbeat. These moments hint at something more. Perhaps freedom is not absolute, but a gradient, a capacity that can be strengthened or weakened, not a binary switch but a field of possibility. You can learn to notice the old scripts as they arise, to question their authority, to introduce pauses, pivots, and rewrites. The will may not be free in the sense of pure autonomy, but it is not entirely captive either. Still, the contradiction persists. Every choice feels both deeply personal and eerily predetermined. The more you strive for autonomy, the more you notice the limits imposed by biology, history, and circumstance. The illusion of freedom is resilient, but so is the machinery of fate. You're lost in mirrors and paradoxes. But if you're not in charge, who or what is making your next move? Are you the sum of your programming, a passenger in your own mind? Or is there a hidden author shaping the story from behind the scenes? The question, unresolved, becomes a kind of fuel. It pushes you to pay closer attention to the micro-moments of choice, to notice the scripts as they play out, to look for spaces where new possibilities can arise. It invites humility, compassion, and creativity. You are not a puppet, nor are you a god. You are something in between, a pattern of possibilities, a locus of uncertainty, a quantum field of agency and inertia. As this realization settles in, you sense a new paradox emerging on the horizon. One even deeper and more disorienting. If you're trapped inside the system, how do you hack the source? Now you know the strings, but can you actually access the code? Or are you forever confined by it? Next, we will journey to the collapse, the very edge of your own programming. If you're trapped inside the system, how do you hack the source? The closer you come to the edges of your own programming, the more profound the sense of contradiction becomes. You've traced the lines of fate and free will, mapped the mirror paradox, and glimpsed the dissolving boundaries of self and reality. Yet a single, monstrous question now looms. Is it even possible to rewrite the code when you are living inside it? How can a system fundamentally alter itself without stepping outside its own logic? You feel this tension every time you attempt genuine transformation. You read, reflect, meditate, and try to reprogram your mind, swapping old beliefs for new, shifting habits, reimagining your own narrative. Each step is a declaration of hope, a leap into the unknown. But as you push further, you encounter resistance at every turn. The mind, ever adaptive, finds new ways to protect the core routines. Old habits mutate, adopting the language of growth and change. You declare independence from one script only to discover you've stepped into another, subtler version. The system has absorbed your rebellion, made it part of its logic. There's a paradox at work here that mirrors the conundrum faced by software trying to rewrite itself while still running. Any significant change risks destabilizing the entire process. If you press too hard, the system can crash. If you go too soft, nothing really shifts. You are, at every moment, the author and the prisoner, the architect and the captive, the one seeking to alter the code and the one bound by its rules. The feeling of being trapped within your own logic is not just intellectual. It's visceral. It shows up in the loops of anxiety that persist no matter how much you analyze them, the return of old self-doubt even after moments of breakthrough, the strange way your life snaps back to a default even after what felt like a total transformation. The code you seek to rewrite is deeply embedded, entwined with the very mechanisms of perception, memory, and identity. Yet even as you bump up against these walls, the urge to transcend them persists. You seek out new tools, new languages, new forms of self-inquiry. Sometimes a crack appears, a glimpse of new possibility, a momentary detachment from the old routines. You catch yourself just before the script runs, hover at the edge of an automatic response, feel the strange vertigo of not knowing what comes next. For a heartbeat, you sense that real change might be possible. But then, as if by some hidden law, the system recalibrates. The new awareness becomes the latest routine. You become skilled at catching yourself, proud of your metacognition, but still unable to truly step outside the logic that governs the whole operation. The cage has simply become more sophisticated. This is the collapse. The realization that every attempt at escape becomes a new form of captivity. The logic of the system is infinitely recursive, always able to accommodate whatever insight or rebellion you throw at it. You reach for the source code only to find that your very effort to reach is itself coded, another subroutine, another piece of the puzzle. The world of quantum physics echoes this strange predicament. In certain interpretations, the observer and the observed cannot be separated. To measure is to alter, to see is to influence. The act of attempting to step outside the system is itself part of the system. There is no outside vantage point from which to rewrite the code. Every effort is already enfolded within the whole. For some, this realization brings despair, a sense that real transformation is impossible, that freedom is an illusion, that the code is absolute. The dream of escape seems like just another fantasy generated by the system to keep itself running. You long for a reset button, a way to step outside yourself, to become the programmer instead of the programmed. But the story does not end in resignation. If the system is self-referential, if every part is connected to every other, then perhaps the change you seek is not about stepping outside, but about altering the rules from within. This requires a new kind of flexibility, a willingness to let go of the fantasy of total control, and to work instead with paradox, recursion, and the strange loops that define consciousness. You begin to sense that the most powerful changes happen not through force, but through subtle shifts in perspective. Sometimes a tiny edit in the code, a new belief, a different question, a reframing of meaning, ripples outward, destabilizing old routines in ways you never anticipated. The system is robust, but it is not unchangeable. It adapts, evolves, reorganizes itself around the smallest anomaly. The challenge is to work with the system, not against it. To notice the points of leverage, the feedback loops, the recursive routines, the glitches and cracks. When you accept that you cannot step entirely outside the code, you start looking for loopholes within. You become a hacker in your own mind, searching for exploits not by brute force, but by creative subversion. Here, humility becomes your greatest asset. The fantasy of total mastery fades, replaced by a kind of playful collaboration with your own limitations. You stop trying to fix yourself once and for all and instead become curious about the endless dance of adaptation and resistance. Each small experiment becomes a chance to disrupt the default, to introduce uncertainty, to allow for emergence. This attitude changes the experience of transformation. You are no longer the tyrant demanding compliance from your mind, but a partner in negotiation. You notice the resistance, thank it for its service, and gently inquire whether it is still needed. Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is a surprising no. Even within the system, you discover space for creativity. The most profound shifts often occur not at the level of conscious intention, but in the subtle, unconscious processes that run quietly in the background. By bringing more awareness to these routines, by questioning the narratives and assumptions you take for granted, you can initiate changes that ripple outward in unpredictable ways. But this process is slow, nonlinear, and often frustrating. There are setbacks, relapses, periods of doubt. You may wonder if anything is truly shifting, or if you are just circling the same loops in ever more elaborate patterns. Yet, even this questioning is part of the system's adaptation. The code is not static. It is living, evolving, shaped by every experience, every failure, every moment of insight. The paradox remains. If you are trapped inside the system, how do you hack the source? The answer is not final, not simple, not comforting. It is an ongoing experiment, a continual unfolding, a willingness to work within the limitations of your own design. Now you know the strings, but can you actually access the code, or are you forever confined by it? The question lingers, unresolved, pulling you onward. You're face to face with the source code, but if reality rewrites itself as you look, can you ever see the truth? Next, we will confront the double-slit dilemma, where the act of observation itself changes everything, and certainty collapses into quantum possibility. If observation changes reality, who's really in charge of what happens next? There is a moment in the history of science when reality itself seems to slip between the fingers of reason. It arrives quietly, in a laboratory, with a simple experiment involving light, slits, and a detector. The double-slit experiment, as it would come to be known, cracks open the logic of the universe and unleashes a paradox so profound that it ripples through every question you've ever asked about the mind, the world, and the nature of truth. Light, when passed through two narrow slits, creates an interference pattern on a screen, a signature of wave behavior. But if you try to observe which slit the light passes through, the pattern vanishes, replaced by the marks of particles, not waves. The act of observation changes the outcome. The universe, it seems, behaves differently depending on whether you are watching. This is not a metaphor. It is a physical fact, measured again and again, immune to ordinary explanation. The rules of the world appear to shift based on attention, collapsing multiple possibilities into a single, observable reality. In this quantum terrain, certainty itself is an illusion. What happens is shaped by the act of looking. The implications for consciousness are staggering. If reality is altered by observation, then what or who is the true observer? Is the universe itself somehow aware? Or is consciousness a local phenomenon, a trick of the brain with no bearing on the world outside? The double-slit dilemma tears open these questions and leaves them unresolved, a wound in the fabric of certainty. You feel the echoes of this dilemma in your own life. Every attempt to see yourself, to know your mind, alters what is seen. The quest for self-knowledge collapses possibilities, selects certain stories, makes others disappear. Observation is not passive. It is creative, generative, active. The search for truth is tangled up with the act of searching. You look for the source code, hoping to catch reality in the act of becoming, but the code rewrites itself as you watch. The rules shift, the outcome changes, the truth dissolves into probabilities. You cannot separate the observer from the observed. The boundaries collapse. This is the universe's great secret, hiding in plain sight. Certainty is a luxury. Probability is the rule. The world is not fixed, but flickering. An endless interplay of wave and particle, possibility and outcome, consciousness and matter. The more you seek a final answer, the more elusive it becomes. For some, this is deeply unsettling. If the universe is shaped by observation, then what anchors reality? If all is flux, what is real? The mind longs for a foundation, a stable ground beneath the shifting sand. Yet the quantum world refuses to supply one. Instead, it offers a strange invitation: to participate in creation, to accept uncertainty, to become comfortable in the not knowing. You notice the same paradox in your efforts to change yourself. Every time you observe a pattern, you alter it. Every act of attention creates new possibilities, but also forecloses others. The mind is not a passive witness, but an active participant in its own unfolding. This is both liberating and frightening. If observation changes reality, who's really in charge of what happens next? Is there a deeper intelligence guiding the process? Or is the universe an elaborate trick, a lie that reveals itself only to collapse into mystery? The double-slit dilemma refuses to be resolved. It remains a permanent glitch, a quantum tear in the narrative of reason. And yet, something remarkable happens when you embrace this uncertainty. The need for a single answer softens. You become willing to live with contradiction, to play in the realm of possibility, to let go of the need to be right. You learn to ask better questions, to welcome new perspectives, to accept that truth is never static. This way of being is not passive. It is creative, collaborative, and alive. Each observation becomes a brushstroke on the canvas of reality. Each moment of awareness generates a new possibility, a new story, a new outcome. The universe is not just a stage. It is an evolving script, rewritten with every act of attention. Still, the riddle persists. You're face to face with the source code. But if reality rewrites itself as you look, can you ever see the truth? The answer is as elusive as ever, shimmering at the edge of perception. As you stand before the double-slit dilemma, a final paradox beckons. A question that refuses to be answered. A mystery that may be the greatest of all. If the rules are only real because you believe in them, what happens when you stop? Next, we will reach the quantum rewrite, the radical possibility that comes from refusing to play by the rules at all. If the rules are only real because you believe in them, what happens when you stop? There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to make sense of a universe that refuses to stay put. You have peered into the mechanics of mind, memory, identity, and reality. You have followed paradoxes down their endless spirals, lived with unresolved riddles, and glimpsed the strange truth. Every rule, every line of code, every logic that governed your life so far is not as absolute as it seemed. The world you inhabit is less like a machine and more like a song, one that rewrites itself each time it's sung. But now, standing at the edge of the familiar, another question pulses. What happens if you simply stop believing in the rules altogether? Not in a reckless, nihilistic way, but with a deeper kind of curiosity, the willingness to suspend every assumption, to refuse every mental contract you never truly signed. In this space, you are no longer trying to hack the code from within. You are stepping out of the game entirely, watching the lines of reality flicker and shift as your attention slides away from the old pathways. This is the quantum rewrite, not a gradual change, not an incremental tweak, but a fundamental shift in the very fabric of experience. The paradoxes you have faced all along converge here. Each one depended on a belief, a rule, a story you inherited or constructed to keep chaos at bay. But the chaos was never your enemy. It was the raw possibility out of which every new world is born. You see, the rules that governed your identity were not handed down by some objective authority. They emerged from repetition, from agreement, from the silent handshake between your biology, your history, your culture, and your choices. Each should, each must, each can't, and never was woven into your mind like a spell. These spells held power not because they were true, but because you believed them, fed them with attention, fear, loyalty, and hope. But what if belief is the only thing sustaining these rules? The possibility emerges, trembling and electric. The moment you stop feeding the old stories, they begin to dissolve. The moment you withhold belief, the code begins to collapse. What felt inevitable becomes negotiable, and what was fixed becomes fluid. The mind, confronted with this freedom, flinches. It wants to cling to any rule, any routine, no matter how painful, because freedom brings uncertainty. The old code protests. This is just who I am. This is the way things are. This is reality. But the voice grows weaker each time you challenge it. Each time you refuse to play by the inherited rules, a new possibility opens. The world does not end. Instead, it wobbles, shivers, and begins to reform around your refusal. In this liminal space, you are invited to ask questions that would once have seemed absurd. What if there are no final answers? What if every identity is provisional? What if every pattern can be interrupted, every habit rewritten, every truth seen as a hypothesis rather than a law? The mind resists, but reality responds to the quality of your questions. New connections spark, new options appear, new meanings flicker at the edges of awareness. The quantum rewrite is not about chaos for its own sake, but about creative possibility. The rules were never absolute, they were agreements, and agreements can be renegotiated. You find yourself asking, over and over, what else is possible here? What is another way of seeing, feeling, acting, being? Each question is a wedge in the cracks of the old system, each refusal an act of radical authorship. This is not a solitary journey. The quantum rewrite is contagious. When one person questions the rules, others feel the tremor. The web of shared assumptions loosens, the game opens, the script expands. Relationships, communities, even whole cultures are shaped by collective stories, and all stories can be retold. What you dare to imagine ripples outward, sometimes invisible, sometimes world-changing. But the paradox persists even here. The mind still longs for closure, still aches for rules to follow. There is a subtle fear. If all boundaries dissolve, will anything remain? Without the old code, will you disappear? The answer arrives, quietly, from the heart of experience. What remains is possibility. What remains is choice, creativity, and an openness to becoming. Freedom is not a blank page, but a field of probabilities, a universe alive with invitations, each one shaped by the observer's gaze. The quantum rewrite is the acceptance that you are both the observer and the participant, the rule maker and the rule breaker. You can shapeshift, adapt, start again, invent new forms, new patterns, new selves. In practical terms, this may begin as a tiny rebellion. Pausing before you act out an old routine, questioning a story you inherited, allowing yourself to feel something new, to speak a truth you once silenced, to reach for a dream you once abandoned. Each act is a quantum rewrite, a disruption of the old agreement, a declaration that the future is not bound by the past. The process is not always comfortable. Old beliefs push back. Guilt, fear, doubt, and confusion surge. It is tempting to return to the familiar, to close the circle, to rest in certainty. But with practice, the discomfort itself becomes a signpost, a signal that something deeper is possible, that you are on the threshold of the unknown. The world around you may not always approve. Those still invested in the old rules will try to pull you back, to reassure themselves that their stories are safe. But each time you honor your own experience, each time you refuse to pretend, the field of possibility expands. You become an agent of change, a living example of the quantum rewrite in action. Over time, a new kind of confidence emerges, not the brittle certainty of the rule-bound mind, but the quiet strength of one who knows that meaning is made, not found. You learn to trust your own creative intelligence, your capacity to shape reality, to collaborate with uncertainty, to welcome surprise. The quantum rewrite is not the end of questions, but the end of unquestioned answers. It is here, at the edge of not knowing, that true transformation unfolds. You become less interested in being right, more interested in being real. Less attached to the story, more alive to the process. Less afraid of chaos, more in love with possibility. As the old code fades, you begin to sense the contours of a new world. One in which every thought is an act of creation, every feeling a signal, every moment an invitation to experiment. You are not bound by who you have been, nor by what others expect. The game is always open, the script always unfinished. You've journeyed through paradox and chaos. But what's left when you decide to break the game entirely? Only this: the freedom to play, to invent, to imagine, to love, to risk, to rest, to begin again. The quantum rewrite is not a destination, but a practice, a way of relating to yourself, to others, and to the universe that honors both the uncertainty and the possibility at the heart of reality. The greatest secret is that you were never truly bound. Not by the rules, not by the stories, not by the code. You were always the observer, the author, the participant. The rules were waiting for you to question them, to outgrow them, to set them aside when they no longer served. The universe, in all its strangeness, has always been more fluid than you dared to believe. If the rules are only real because you believe in them, what happens when you stop? Something beautiful, something wild, something as yet unimagined. The future opens. The story continues. And you, quantum traveler, are free to rewrite your mind, your reality, your world, one paradox, one question, one moment at a time.